Hey guys, welcome back to FPL Fran. Today's video is going to be a Gameweek 33 team selection, but first of all, we'll review the Gameweek 32 free hit. Now, funnily, if you actually watched my YouTube videos last week on the free hit, I think the first draft I actually posted on YouTube actually ended up getting 88 points. I kept the same front line, so I had Isak, Tony, and Watkins, and I changed two players. I changed Gakpo and Gabriel, and what was originally Odegaard and Robertson, of course, had a net plus 9 points, so of course that was 88 points. So I hope you guys probably copy that video as opposed to my final draft if you decided to take any inspiration from some of my picks, but I ended up with 79 points in the end, made a change towards Gakpo simply because I thought that Gakpo would start, and I thought there was a good amount of upside there, whereas Arsenal clean sheet odds were supposedly higher on some betting houses, so that was quite interesting for me to move into maybe making sure that I didn't have double Liverpool defense, which actually turned out to be a good idea because I think Liverpool were also quite poor defending versus Nottingham Forest, but I really could not have explained or even imagined Southampton scoring 3 goals versus Arsenal, which was even wilder out of my expectations for me. But that was the reality. I did captain Salah, of course. I'm sure some people who didn't free hit might have gone for an Arsenal captaincy, and of course, if they went for Saka and Martinelli, they would have done better. But the free hit was very successful, right? And Isak, of course, the big differential there, even going for Tony as well, where a lot of managers had gone for Moreno, but I still thought it was a perfectly good fixture for Brentford, particularly at home. And the numbers actually for Tony as of late have been really, really positive. So we were saying that Tony still made a lot of sense as a pick, even though Watkins equally also made sense as a pick. The idea, of course, behind that is that you can still have two strikers and they, within a reasonable outcome could both score. I mean, look at the Brighton-Brentford 3-3 game as a good example of that. As far as the actual team, Johnson, of course, was massive, but actually his 55% ownership in the top 10K and around 50% in top 100K probably suggested that around 50 to 60% of the active playing population right now did all go for a free hit. So the fact that I got a big green arrow was really positive, and I'm super happy about that ultimately. But I think that's enough about the free hit, really. Let's just crack on with my defenders this week. My defense this week is going to be Steele, Trent, Trippier, and Botman. And the reason why I'm going for Steele is I'm just going to tempt fate here and hope that he actually gets a start. Sanchez actually had a brilliant performance in the FA Cup semi-final, and there are some concerns in my head now about Gameweek 34, the availability of Steele to actually be the starting keeper for both games. And so I'm hoping that Steele gets the start for Nottingham Forest, that Sanchez is still for the time being deposed. However, I am very worried about Steele losing his spot. And if Steele does lose his spot in the team, I do feel like I might be making a move to Ederson in the future, and that would probably be my way to circumvent losing Steele. I'd also have to reconsider what I do with my third Brighton asset because, of course, they double in 34, and I don't really want to miss out on Brighton players, particularly if that means I have to just force another hit. If that's the case, I'm happy to do it, just simply so I can get, effectively a double game week keeper for that week and also another playing player, whether it's a defender or a midfielder. As far as Trent, Trippier, Botman, you can see obviously there's a conundrum here where I have Shaw and Zinchenko on my bench. Now, Zinchenko's definitely not in my considerations. I really think City will be able to score versus this Arsenal team, particularly with the performances that Arsenal have been showing as of late. And it's not necessarily the underlying stats. I mean, Arsenal's underlying stats have been poor from the defensive point of view in recent games, but it's just the mistakes that we're starting to show and we're starting to see now from this Arsenal team that are actually really struggling with high press at times. They're not necessarily dominating the game as much as they have in previous matches. I think there are clearly spurs and bouts of possession where they do lose the ball quite often in the midfield and they're no longer able to actually pass the ball effectively to Odegaard fast enough so that it gets converted into attack. So sometimes you do see them get collapsed on quite easily, and we saw that with, for example, Rice in the West Ham game when he kind of broke through Partey, who made a small mistake, and then also just the bundle of chances that we actually saw Southampton get, even when you discount the Ramsdale mistake. Trent, of course, he is non-negotiable at this point in time. He is someone who just has a fantastic fixture, West Ham away. It's good when you look at West Ham in the context of the season that they've had. I think, yes, they have had two blinders of performances when it comes to the attacking point of view, and of course Trent has a very easy opportunity to lose his clean sheet, but simply because Trent is playing so well in this midfield position, he actually does look like such a creative asset. The reality is you're looking at Trent as an attacker, and Trent has to start from you in a game week where Shaw unfortunately doesn't seem like his great probabilities of getting a clean sheet isn't as attacking because there's a high likelihood that he'll play left center back. And with someone like Zinchenko, a similar sort of position where you don't see him, of course, be as creative as Trent. He does take shots on goal. He does create, of course, but he is more part of the cog in the system as a midfield piece who's not looking to make these sort of final balls that Trent actually does frequently because that is within his wheelhouse as a player. As far as Trippier and Botman, Now, Shaw obviously looked fantastic in the previous match, but I think, of course, he has a slight injury, whatever the situation is. I'm happy to play Botman here because the clean sheet odds are very, very high for a team like Newcastle. And then when we go to look at someone like Trippier, you're looking at a player who still looks fantastic from the offensive point of view, takes a lot of set pieces, and should have ample opportunities to do well versus an Everton team that really shouldn't be able to break the clean sheet of a Newcastle team, even though they're away from home. As far as the midfielders this week, I am actually going to be going with Mitoma and McAllister. They, for me, are locks. Now, McAllister actually did play once again in that sort of right defensive mid position within this Brighton structure. So once again, Mac 10 has become Mac 6. But we have the issue where McAllister is still a penalty taker. He's still versus a very weak team in Nottingham Forest. We still saw good chances where he has been playing in the 6th position to create. So I'm still happy and tempted to play him there, given that Nottingham Forest is such a bad team. As far as Mitoma, I'm still, of course, super excited to play him. He's non-negotiable for this week. And the same with Rashford, especially considering the calamitous performance of Spurs. Now, Spurs did actually operate with a back four for what was a while in that sort of game versus Newcastle when they really went 5-0 down in 21 minutes, which was effectively Premier League history and something that was essential for my free hit team to actually succeed. But Rashford has to stay in my team. He still looks like a great asset. Of course, he does look like he's been run down by, of course, the groin injury and the insane run of schedule that United have. And Fernandes, of course, there is a little bit of an asterisk here and even a question mark as to his availability, because we did see him wrapped with an ice pack. He did seem like to roll his ankle. He did actually still continue to play on the pitch. And one of my concerns for this United team is what happens when Fernandes isn't playing. I do think that they didn't really look particularly threatening at whatsoever when Fernandes was off the field. So that is one point of concern. But Rashford independently has been able to create a lot of chances by himself this season. So I still think Rashford is a play. Fernandes, of course, the issue is that I have Grealish first on my bench, and that's the assumption that maybe Foden could even come into the team, play versus Arsenal. Now, Grealish was actually subbed off a little bit early in the Sheffield United game, so that does lead me to think that maybe Pep is resting him so that he can actually start for the Arsenal game and be an effective piece there. My concern now, of course, is that, as ever, really, with someone like Grealish, is the upside there? Is he actually going to be my transfer for Game Week 34 to Salah? Because previously I thought it would have been Bruno. However, Bruno has looked quite good in recent games. Getting in the 10 position, he is someone who I think is going to have a higher ceiling than Grealish naturally in 34. And with Foden fully fit and ready to play crucial minutes for the City team, then my concern is that Grealish could see much less game time than compared to someone like Bruno, who, if he's actually fit in Game Week 34, will probably play 180 minutes of football. However, Grealish will probably maybe play something close to 140 if Foden becomes a rotation piece around then. And therefore, it makes sense for me to go from Grealish to someone like Salah instead on 34 and play a 3-4-3 setup then. At this point in time, or 3-5-2 really, as far as right now, based on the news that we have available, I'm expecting that Fernandes will start the game. However, we won't be getting an Erik ten Hag press conference, and that's going to be really tough when it comes to actually guessing whether Fernandes will be available for the Tottenham game. So I do think that the one variable in my team selection this week is whether I go for Grealish as a starter or Fernandes as a starter. For now, I think I'm going to go with Fernandes as a starter. But of course, we will look into the details behind Bruno and whether he actually truly is injured and whether he'll actually be able to make it to this Tottenham game, because there is a little bit of really a short overhang between today's match and, of course, the Thursday game. So with my forwards this week, I am actually going to be playing Watkins, Kane, and Haaland. Watkins will be my vice captain, although I'm actually quite tempted to go for a captaincy on someone like Watkins. Arsenal have been a very competent away defense. Now, recently, of course, Arsenal have stumbled, and we are now looking at them as almost effective as a team to target from a kind of break in their defense point of view. But Haaland, of course, has just been exceptional as of late, so it's not just really looking at Arsenal being a team to target whatsoever. That's not true. Arsenal are still a fantastic team, but it's about Haaland and what he can really bring into this game. I still think that the chances are fantastic. Them being at the Etihad makes a huge difference for me, particularly when you look at Man City and their ability to actually create chances at the Etihad compared to away from home. They've been a much better attacking team at home, so that leads me to think, of course, that this is a very simple standard Haaland captaincy. And a lot of people will be tempted by the Watkins captaincy, maybe even potentially a Salah captaincy, but I can't really see it when Salah's away from home with West Ham, and ultimately Watkins looks exceptional as a pick, and he'd probably be my second vice captaincy option, even if I had Salah on my team. But at this point in time, I'm going to go and keep the captaincy on Haaland, and that's going to be my Game Week 33 team selection. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.